This is part 2 of episode 1. Last week, we talked about Jeffrey and his personal constitution and went through a lot of that. Today, we're going to get into some more business things. However, before we begin, this is Jeffrey Saad. I'm Steve Shull, and this is all about recipes and repetitions for life and business. And I just caught a quick glimpse. He did a little Cinco de Mayo thing. Maybe you just start out there, a menu or what, a recipe.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I wish you could have smell on this podcast because I got guajillo and ancho chilies all over me and achiote. It's Cinco de Mayo. So this week I posted a couple killer recipes. One is a mezcal margarita.
Okay.
Nice, beautiful, smoky heat, but you marinate a habanero, drop it into the bottle, let it sit overnight. It gets this beautiful tropical heat to it. And that just kind of comes in the back of your throat as you're drinking that margarita. And then I got some really great Harry's berries at the Santa Monica Farmers Market, and they're so naturally sweet. So I thought, so just poured a little of that spicy mezcal over them, let them sit. So now you have these alcohol-soaked spicy strawberries. Perfect dessert, little kicker. And then today I've been in the kitchen, half the day with my daughter. She's in town. She loves to cook. It's like our thing. So we're making all this food for tonight.
You talked a lot about the restaurant business,
right?
And that was really career one. And second big career is real estate. And so I just want to walk everybody through where you started and where we are today. So, why real estate? What happened?
What's interesting as kind of a bigger picture thing is what I think I'm so grateful for is, I think everyone thinks either they're supposed to be an X or they can't be an X and a Y. Everything has to be kind of compartmentalized. And I've had such a joy realizing you can kind of just do it all. So I started off with restaurants. I was, we talked a little bit last time, I was this wimpy little kid. Wish I could have played football. I got thrown around like a rag doll. My sister could beat me up. So I started cooking and I said, that's it. I'm going to open a restaurant. So when I graduated culinary school, I think I told you the speaker said the only difference between dreams and reality is how bad you want it.
Okay.
And I just love that because everyone's like, you got to go get your experience first. And, there's some truth to all that as well, of course. But I was like, no, I'm doing this. So I signed a lease, opened my first restaurant and just had a blast figuring out as I went along. But one of the most rewarding parts of it was when you go in, you don't even have to call it passion necessarily, but when you go in with drive and curiosity, kind of nothing can stop you, because you're curious, you're constantly asking questions, you're constantly wanting to be better, you're wanting to know what the customer thinks. And if you have drive, and they kind of go hand in hand, because if you're curious, it drives you to get better. So yeah, I opened the first restaurant called Sweet Heat. I was 24 years old, San Francisco. The Marina District was just starting to gentrify. I was the first one on the block to not be the old Italian deli or the whatever, the steakhouse. And everyone's like gourmet Mexican, healthy food to die for. And, we had this, cool little, Mayan, icon and it was just a joy. And it was about evolution because I started off, well, first of all, I signed the lease and, didn't even know what I was going to do. I went to Mexico, started learning. And I started off with all this gourmet stuff, but then it kept evolving into very traditional Mexican stuff because the more I'd travel, I got more into all the traditional dishes of Mexico. But I was blessed because it was a fun time. And it was like, and I think if we could all apply this at any phase of our life, one of the things that made it work so well, Steve, is that I just had nothing to lose mentally or financially. I was like, hey, I'm going to show up. This is what I'm doing. I'm going to do it the best I can do every day. And that's why I sleep well. And I'm going to get up and do it again.
And where did that approach come from? Was that something developed naturally? Thought about it a lot?
That's a great question. And I think some of that was natural. And then I think when I switched into real estate and then I switched from real estate into the cooking TV show world, I was able to tap back into that and say, well, if it worked then, why can't it work now? Just because I have kids and I'm 40, just because I have kids and I'm 50, just because we have mortgages and investments, let me erase that part and just say, well, what actually made it work? It wasn't worry that made it work. It wasn't the thought of all these other things that could not let it work. It was what made it work. And what made it work was I'm curious, I'm driven, I'm doing this and I'm going in. So, that was the transition. And the biggest lesson I got at, gosh, how old was I? I opened at 24, opened 3 locations. I was like 28 or 29, I think. We had 2 kids. Oh, at the time we had one daughter, Isabella, 3 restaurants, 1 daughter. She was about to turn 1. And I said to Nadia, let's go to Paris for a couple months. I've never been. I want to go and see Paris. She's like, we have 3 restaurants. I go, we have 3 restaurants. You know, if you're not going to do what you want to do, you might as well work for somebody else, right? That's the whole point. And it was the ultimate test because I was a control freak, like most new business people, right? But I said, you know what? I have trained these people. I believe in these people. I think I've got a culture that works. They can do this. So we rented an apartment. This is way before Airbnb or any of this stuff. It was like we went on to some random site and found some professor in this 5th arrondissement of Paris that was leasing his apartment. And of course, we didn't know when we got there, until we got there, that it was a 3-story walk up with a stroller and a 1-year-old. But you know what? We did it. And I just said to my general manager that was kind of overseeing all 3, I said, your job description? When I go to the ATM, please make sure money comes out. You know? And it was, I mean, I don't think there could be a more joyful, rewarding experience. It took me a year to pay it off probably, but Isabella and I are like this to this day because of that, I swear. We walked the streets of Paris every single day. We brought Nadia's mom with us.
Okay.
We were lucky to have her. So, you know, we could go out at night and stuff. And during the day, we could all be together. But it was a great lesson because, you know, oh, you have 3 restaurants. You can't leave. Ooh, what's going to happen? Well, you know what happened?
Was it email then or were we before?
Yep. There was email.
All
right. I'll never forget, actually. It was 19. I know this. I'll always remember when the internet really started to go because it was 1993 when I opened the first restaurant. And I think it was about halfway through the first year of the restaurant where I said to my GM, come upstairs in the office. I got to show you this. www.http:// watch this. He would ask me a question and I'd put it in and it would pop up. He's like, what's going on? Where's that? You know, looking behind the computer. I mean, it was amazing. So yeah, I had just email. I think I got my first flip cell phone in like 94 or something. Does that sound right? But like, I didn't have that in Paris, obviously. But it was, the lesson was do this when you have an opportunity in front of you, think expansion, not necessarily happiness or rich, but expansion. If I choose this, will my life, the people around me expand? And that's what happened. And not only do we expand, but while we're in Paris, this guy is coming into my 3 restaurants, keeps asking for me. And they're like, oh, he's in Paris. Comes back 3 weeks later. He's in Paris. Comes back he's in Paris. He couldn't believe these things were running like they were running and I wasn't even there. So we got back. He bought the whole thing for me. All 3 locations. I had 2 bottled chutneys, Soul Man green chili chutney and Soul Man red chili chutney. And I was selling those at Williams-Sonoma and he just bought the whole thing. And that's how we bought our first real estate investment.
So, all right. So I remember a couple things from the beginning. One is if someone were to ask you, right, you know, on day 1, are you a top agent? Your answer was yes.
Yes.
Speak to that.
In my head, what is a top agent? The definition of a top anything, in my opinion, yeah, you need to be able to execute, which I knew I could, but it's how you take care of your clients. That's top. If you take care of your clients, if you exceed expectations, if you make it happen. And I applied all those skills from the restaurant to real estate. Like, how do you exceed a customer? Now we call it a client, a customer's expectation in the restaurant. How do I work with my crew, my staff to do the same? And I was going to do the same in real estate because it is that mindset. Again, it's like, you know, the LA joke is fake it till you make it, but there's something real in there, which is that if you don't start seeing the success and believing that that's going to be the outcome, right? You're already in trouble. So I would already put myself in, they're not going to be in any better hands than with me.
You're starting at absolute scratch, right?
But at least I had no money.
All right. So it sounds like you had a pretty successful first year in real estate.
Thanks to you. First, second, third, fourth, fifth. I think, you know, in our business, it's silly to quote numbers, but you know, the whole thing was what's your net, you know, and we hit an insane record amount in year 6 or 7 because of you. It was like incredible.
And it was just door knocking, open house.
Open houses were everything. You know, I loved it. Open houses were like the retail shop of real estate. That's your retail shop. And, you know, that was your chance. We're there. How many times do you get them coming to you? You know, that's the point. So we did a lot from door knocking, from open houses. And also we did a ton of business in these condo buildings in West Hollywood our first year. But what did I do? First thing I did was, well, who's the most important person in the building? the front desk manager. Okay, I'm going to get to know them. I still remember Francesca from 1230 Horn. I went in there, introduced myself. I said, do you know what's going on in the building sales-wise? She goes, no. I said, would you like to? Because I can send you a great summary every week. Oh, how great. Boom. My first email blast. Every Monday I'd send her active, pending, sold in the building. Started to build a rapport with her. Guess who she would tell to call when somebody always started with the front manager gabbing, I think I'm going to sell my place. Boom. And don't just do what everyone else is doing. I would hear people say, hey, I'm looking, my client was looking for a house in the street or a unit in that building. And I said, oh, there's nothing listed. My client said to me, God, I'd love a view unit in that building. I said, done. I went in there, introduced myself to Francesca. Would it be all right if I just walked the hall to get to know the building? I want to talk about this building like a pro. Of course. Wrote down the number of every view unit. And then I said, what am I doing? Oh, okay. But I'm going to send a letter to every unit anyway. And I said, my client's looking for a view unit. I know yours is one of them. This is not a solicitation. I can bring him over tomorrow. Nobody in the view unit wanted to sell, but somebody else answered the letter and we sold the first unit and then the next one and then the next one. And eventually found him a view unit. But it was like, I'm not going to stop with it's not listed. I'm going to go get it. That's the difference.
So how many unique and innovative business development ideas did you come up with, Jeffrey?
Probably none. Like I say with everything, even a great chef, you're like, it's all been done before, in some version. But what I knew was you need something. I'm the one supposed to provide it. Let's go do it. It was like the beginning of COVID when everyone in the office was all upset and said, we're in this together. I'm like, no, we're not. Our clients have their brother-in-law and sister to be in it together. We're here to solve their real estate problems. I'm going to put on a hazmat suit if I have to. And that's what we did. We put on a hazmat suit and did inspections and sold a house when everyone else was still, like it's not safe to go out. And yeah, listen, I respected the protocols, but there's stuff you got to get done and people need it done.
I want to fast forward to right now. And every day right now, I hear people really struggling. This is a challenging market. It is. And what's interesting, though, is people keep thinking that someone else must be doing something that they're not doing. And, because someone's doing business, someone's always doing business. I don't care what the market is. Someone's always doing business. And this idea, and they're actually, and that's what they want from me every day. They want to know what someone else is doing that I'm not telling them on purpose, right? I'm torturing them and waiting for them to beg for the secret sauce. Do you ever do that to yourself? Drive yourself nuts in that way?
I don't have time for that because what I choose to do is say, like everything in life should be like this. Do you love your life? Yes or no? Yes. Great. Keep doing that. No. Okay. Why do you not love your life? What's missing? Well, my business is down. Okay. Why is it down? Okay. What can you do about that? So I know that if I'm doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and those things I believe 1, 2, 3 will make business happen, then all I have to do is keep focusing on those 6. It's not for me to decide when the business is going to come or not come. And I don't need to know what you're doing because that doesn't affect my 6 steps. I just need to keep doing these 6 steps and believe that it's coming. And it's like my roller coaster analogy. Whether it's coming or not, or when it's coming or not, I have no control over anyway. So I might as well just stay focused on the 6 things I can do every day and keep repeating them until it works out. Now, don't get back on the horse if it's 3-legged horse. Fine. If you help me identify many of these in the early days. Those are great 8 steps, Jeff. Throw 4 of them out because that's stupid and will never work. And keep doing the other 4, and let's add these 2.
The Olympics are coming up, and there's a track star. His name is Noah Lyles.
Noah Lyles.
He's in his 20s. I watched an interview with him a couple years back. And he was talking, and he was the world record holder in the 200 meters at the time. And he was talking to his coach about breaking world records. And his coach said, you don't break a world record when you're ready. You break a world record when the day is ready. And he was pointing out there's so many things that have to line up. You just have to be ready all the time because you never know when the day is going to be ready. And I liken that to real estate. You never know when the buyer's going to show up. You never know when the seller's going to show up. You have to be ready.
Love that
day.
That's so perfectly said, Steve.
And, this whole podcast is really about showing up as your best self. That's really what this journey that we're going to go back and forth on, because that's where it all starts.
And that's what makes your life great.
Right.
That's the beauty, is it's like, this applies to everything. You can be half as talented, and if you're your best self and a good version, you'll do more business than the person that's twice as talented and miserable. I used to always joke about that in the early days, right? You got two choices. People couldn't believe it when I started in real estate, and my voicemail every Friday at 4:00 said, "Thank you so much for calling. This is Jeffrey Saad. I look forward to checking messages, getting back to you on Sunday. Have a great weekend." You can't do that. You're in real estate. Yeah, I can. If I define the parameters, then when I show up, my engines are roaring at 100% every time. So I'd rather be 100%. Your old line, my favorite line. Why don't realtors work 5 days a week?
Realtors work 7 days a week because they don't work 5.
Yeah. There was, there's this, and I'm sure it applies to many businesses. Probably your original, that Wall Street's got to be that way in a big way.
Right.
Like, if I just do more, I'll do better. No, you won't, because you're showing up at 40%. Your engines are sputtering. Better to define the time you're going to give work, show up as your best self in that time. And when I show up, and I've been there for my kids, when I show up and my wife and I have been on vacation and I didn't care what business I miss, I'm my best version. I have something worth sharing. I'm worth being around because I'm just in my best place with a true desire to take care of you.
So when you look back, what are some simple things that you would leave with the audience in terms of how to show up being their best self? Because in the end, that's what it's all about. It's not about how many homes you sold, how much money you've made. Are you being your best self on a daily basis?
Yeah. To me, the definition of rich is you can wake up every morning and go, I love my life. And of course, you're going to have mornings where you're not feeling that way, but the concept, right?
Right. And
that's what I do. It's like, I love my life. Like that, it's finding that balance between appreciation and aspiration. If you don't have gratitude, the altitude doesn't matter, because you're going to be, up here where you think is some amazing place to be. But without the gratitude, the appreciation, you're going to feel empty anyway. And as you said a million times, there will never be enough money. So my success with this that I like to share with people is start by saying, what does your ideal life look like? And then work backwards. Not, I'm going to be a maniac, and then when I get there, I'll figure it out. No, work backwards. My ideal life looks like this. I always say, and I'm only barely joking, first I schedule my French classes. Then I schedule, my workouts. I schedule my family time. I schedule my wife time. I schedule my vacations. Oh, and then whatever time's left, I'll work.
That's how I teach time blocking. Yeah, exactly that way.
That's it. But and then when you've been telling us this you have insisted on, like you said, for my whole 24 years. If you say, I'm going to make those calls between 10 and 11, or I'm going to knock between 10 and 11, if you just do that, it's done. And then, what most people do is they won't block it. So then it's just this endless weight and stress, and it all spirals downward instead of upward. So to me, it's like, decide what you want your life to look like. And then I always say, let's say you and I start following people with a camera all week. We're going to follow them day to night and show them the video. Will they be proud of what they saw in that video? Right? It's like that famous, was it Peter Drucker? Who said that? Tell me what's important to you. I might believe me. I might believe you. Show me your checkbook and your calendar, and I'll tell you what's important to you.
Right.
And I think that people, it's really taking a moment to be honest. Am I doing what will give me the life I want, or am I doing stuff for just some random reason and I'm lost?
All right. So where are you today in business? What's your approach? What are you looking to accomplish? What are you looking to do right now in your real estate business?
Well, really what we just said, in the early days, it was like, and it served a purpose in the early days, and it probably still serves a purpose for some. But in the early days, it was like, I'm going to do this many transactions, this many buyer sides, this many seller sides, this much volume. I don't have any financial goals like that. Zero.
Right.
I say, I'm going to do these things in this time each day. And whatever that yields.
I'm going to do these things in this time each day. That's the recipe.
That's it. And then coincidentally, it keeps seeming to yield a good life. I keep waking up happy. I keep making it happen. Sure, we're slow now, but again, I'm not defining my life by a moment in time. It isn't for me to decide. There's no expiration date on dreams. There's no expiration date on anything. Keep at it. And it's like the old stories of the gold rush in California, right? All these people sold their shovels, their tools, everything. And guess what? The person they sold it to, one more scoop and they hit gold. They just sold the shovel a scoop too soon. Just keep shoveling, man, and shovel with a smile and take breaks, because if you can't shovel forever, your hands will fall off. Be willing to say, okay, today we didn't hit the goal, but I'm going to go have a great dinner, see my family, enjoy my kids, come back tomorrow and start digging again. And guess what? If somebody's digging longer and harder and find something sooner, okay, that's not my business. What other people think of me is none of my business. What other people are doing is none of my business.
And what are the few things that you're trying to get done every day?
Every day, I want to make sure that I'm being my best self, personally, professionally, which really are become the same thing.
Okay.
Every day, I want to make sure that I've done what I said I would do. Reach out to my contacts, my clients, my database, take care of the deals that I have going. And in that order, by the way, because as you said to me, one of your greatest lines ever, you're going to remember this. There are no emergencies in real estate. Houses don't bleed.
Nobody's dying. Houses don't bleed.
That was one of the greatest things you ever taught me, because ignoring can be the best solution. Instead of calling back when somebody's at their most heated moment, you wait to call back in a couple hours. It's already been solved. Escrow figured it out. The person realized they made a mistake, or they've calmed down at least, so you can have a conversation that will be beneficial.
Right. When the business is flowing in, that's not the time to go surfing, right?
Yeah.
And I always say this, that's the time to stand on top of the table and say, give me more.
Yeah.
Give me more.
Yeah.
And then when it's slow, that's when you go go take care of yourself and recharge. I was listening to a podcast today, an author of a book called The Empathetic Edge. And she was talking about corporations and their marketing strategy and how to be an empathetic, business. But as part of this, she talked about taking care of the soil so that things can really grow. And, the analogy is, that's what your database is all about. Nurturing that soil, really taking care of it. And that's all you're really doing in real estate.
Yeah.
Just taking care of people.
Yeah. Yeah. And really, I think one of the biggest shifts for me, which again, you've been part of, is like, as Sally Forster Jones said, clot quickly. I love how great that term is. In the old days, and when I say old days, even 4 or 5 years ago, lost some big listing that I had been taking care of that soil for years. Right. This isn't crazy, man. Now it's like 7 seconds. Whew. Like a bad punch. Just let it go. It's okay. I'm going to nurture all the soil. I'm not going to tie my well-being to one bud, to one sprout. I'm about the whole farm. So it's okay if a couple die off or don't work out. And it's so peaceful to know if they don't choose me, I wasn't the choice. I either, in their eyes, I'm not the best choice. That's not for me to decide. It's okay. Or was there an opportunity? Oops, you know what? They weren't in that campaign I was working on, so I didn't take care of the soil. My bad. So the first thing I do is go, what did they need? And what could I have done better? Not, how can they do this to me after all these transactions? It's silly. It is so peaceful to let go of all that stuff. Again, the circle of control, my favorite tattoo, one little circle. If it's inside, I'm all over it. Let's make it happen. If it's outside, there's nothing for me to do.
And on that note, let's wrap, man.
Recipes and repetitions, baby.
The coach, the recipe, the repetition. All right, Jeffrey.
Pleasure as always.